G'day guys, welcome to another round of cheap crap from China. First up today I have an item that I wasn't actually planning on putting on these mailbags, and that's a sleep mask. Now I got one of these a while ago, this one, which has been quite nice. The place I'm living in at the moment, the blinds don't cover the window too well. I end up getting blasted with sun at like 6 AM every morning, and well, I'm a night owl, so that doesn't usually work too well for me. I haven't really wanted to put blackouts over the windows. I do open the windows through the day and such, so it's been sort of a hard one to combat, but I found that sleeping mask has really helped. And shopping around, I found this thing, which, well, for a start, when I found it online, I didn't even realize it was wireless. I thought it was plug in with a like 3.5mm audio cable, but no, turns out it is actually a sleeping mask with wireless speakers built in. So for listening to, I do listen to a lot of audiobooks. I figured this might be a very good way of doing it so that I could actually sort of lay down in bed, listen to one, and it's got the controls right on the headset to sort of play and pause. And yeah, I grabbed it almost on a whim, but it's actually very much impressed me. The quality of the audio through it, and the comfort of wearing it, it's all been, yeah, very impressive. So I'll see now if I can give you a quick demo. I don't know how well this is going to work, but I'll try it. Okay. Yeah, I've been very impressed with the quality, so I just thought I'd cover that off at the start. First things first, let's keep it simple. Integrated circuits. We have some SMD cut tape, thankfully completely unlabeled. Gotta love it when they do that. Thankfully, this time I know exactly what these are. These are SI2303 MOSFETs. These were, it was a little while ago, I believe it was Big Clive, tore down a, like, vibrator and was absolutely shocked at the motor driver transistor in it was a tiny little part, a little SOT23, that was handling the full current of the motor. And that was, I believe, an SI2300. And yeah, they are good for up to about 3 amps. With a very weak drive, you only need sort of 2.5 volts, and they are very low gate capacitance, so it takes very little signal to turn them on and off. But they can handle a surprising amount of current. They just have a really low on resistance. So I've been using these now since both the P channel and the N channel. They've have a sort of vaguely equivalent parts. The P channels don't handle quite as much current, they're a little bit higher resistance. But the one problem I've had with them is that the SI 2300 has a fairly lowish maximum voltage rating. I think it's about 15 volts, maybe even 10 volts. So there's been a couple of projects where I've gone like, oh, I don't know if that's really going to cut it. This is the SI 2303, which is slightly higher on resistance. I think they're rated for like 1.4 amps instead of 3 amps. But they're rated up to 35 volts, something like that. So just rounding out the kit again. But certainly handy parts to have on hand, especially when designing circuits. Because I know I can design a circuit and use that, and I'll be able to assemble it at home without any big dramas. Next up, the next least exciting, is a cable. Wow, that's quite unexciting. I thought I ordered 2 of these. I'll have to check that. Oh no, yep, I did. Good. So these are micro USB extension cables. So why on earth would you want that? Just use a longer micro USB cable, you say? Yeah, well, with my new setup that I've been building here, my new desk with everything set up on it, I have a USB hub that uses a micro USB for power in the back, for a sort of additional power. And that's great. I've got that lead running down my desk to a little plug pack plugged into the power point. But it's already a 1.8 meter cable, and it only just barely reaches a USB hub. Now that plug pack has 4 USB outlets, and they're all good outlets, like they're rated to 2.1 amp each. It's like an 8 amp supply unit. So I would like to plug more cables into that, but I'm never going to get like a 5 meter USB cable that'll actually handle that distance. So I figure this way I can have micro USBs that are sort of up next to that USB hub on my desk, that are sort of a bit annoying to reach to, but if I want to plug my phone in or something to charge quickly, I can. But if I'm working on a project on my desk, I can use that same permanent power and just patch into it with this. So initially I had tried to use a USB hub for a similar task, but all the hubs I've tried so far just have too much voltage drop. Internal resistance on them is savage. Next up, slightly bigger ticket item, wireless keyboard. So this is one of these media PC keyboard units, which I've tried several of before, and most of them I haven't liked. For one reason or another, just the layout isn't good, or they're not that usable. This one seemed to tickle my fancy. So already, yes, those keys have a quite nice feel. They all have this sort of old school membrane button feel, but yeah, old school. Pull to connect battery. Maximum operating voltage 3.3 volts. Charging limit 4.2 volts. Go figure. This, like a lot of these units, this is an old Nokia battery form factor. BL5C, I believe. It's become quite popular to use these batteries as sort of generic units for these modules, and I've never used them in my own projects purely because it's such a pain to build that battery connector housing where it has to sit in the correct place, but I very much appreciate devices that do use that form factor, because they're, well, obviously much, much smaller than 18650s, but they're also very plentiful and common. If anything, most people, I think, is into electrical engineering probably have one or two of those old Nokia batteries lying around in a drawer somewhere from some old phone. Whether they still work or not, that's another story, but they are very, very plentiful, and they are still being made, so... And they're cheap. So if you need to replace it, it's not hard at all. So yeah, I'll have to give this a go. The gestures, yeah, left click, right click, scroll. Yeah, I guess, why not? So I'll have to give this thing a thorough test, and I may report back if there's anything interesting, either good or bad. But for now, yep, that's the second biggest product for today. And now the big one. This thing was not cheap. I normally review cheap crap from China. This was 80 bucks, maybe 70. More than pocket change, that's for sure. Okay, as you might be able to see there, it is a Sony IMX179 USB camera that can take, it'll do 1080p 30, 720p at 120 FPS, and stills it'll go up to 8 megapixels. So it's pretty similar to your average phone camera, but with a USB interface, which, believe it or not, is actually quite difficult to find. The specs on this are fairly similar to the Raspberry Pi camera, and that's well renowned as being sort of better than you can normally hook up to a PC, just because of the data rates involved. They're using a specialized sort of digital camera interface, DCI. But yeah, this is a standard, well, not even USB 3, USB 2? Really? The camera itself, like the camera module, has hardware. Not sure if it's H.264 or 265, but one of them, hardware encoding, as well as all the usual motion JPEG and whatnot. A little protector off. So one of the big things that this has been touted for has been machine vision. Now I've done some stuff before with low resolution video feeds, just doing sort of motion detection and that sort of stuff with OpenCV. And yes, that works. You can sort of detect not only, oh, there's now a car that's come into my driveway, but it's this color of car, or even this vague shape of car. So, okay, it's probably this person, they're allowed to be there, or no, it's not one of the allowed colors, so raise an alarm, someone's parking in our private car parking spot, this sort of thing. But lately I've been playing around with some of the more advanced sort of artificial intelligence stuff, the TensorFlow, DarkFlow systems, and YOLO, which is not the popular expression. It's you only look once. It's a image recognition system designed for still images. It can be used with video, but it takes an inordinate amount of processing power to do so. But so it can take a still image and can identify all sorts of things in that image. It'll tell you this is a person, this is a chair, this is a bed, this is a bus, this is a car, this is etc, 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 and give you neat outlines around it. and I believe Google did some of the training for it, where they've produced this basic sort of YOLO. I'm not even sure what you call it. It's not instructions. It's not training. It's the recognition file that tells it what it can see. So I did play around with that with the camera I'm using to record this video. But unfortunately, the still images on this camera don't go up that high. It's a 1080p 30 video camera. It's a Logitech C922. But the still images are only a shade above 1920 by 1080. It's like 2250 by, yeah, whatever. Whereas this will take very high resolution still images. And so then I can play around with processing those and getting even more data out of scenes. So it was just something to experiment with. I may even experiment with mounting this camera up in one of my masks that I've got around the place to sort of my overhead swing arms, and start using this for video recording, which may solve some of the focus issues and whatnot I've had with the 922. I only bought the 922 fairly recently on the back of the EEV blog video where he did a side-to-side comparison of the C920 and the C922, and the main feature the C922 had was better focusing. It would autofocus more frequently, and it would more often pick the close target that's right in the center of the field of view. And from my experience, it has not been doing that in the slightest. Pretty much every time it will focus on my desk, no matter what's in front of it and how big it is, and sort of where that is in the field of view. I've found this, it seems to actually alternate between corners. So the autofocus will, first time it autofocuses, whatever is in this top left corner, that's what it'll focus to. Next time it autofocuses, it's whatever in this top right corner. So if you're only holding something in the top left and it's the desk in the top right, then suddenly it'll just drop out of focus for no apparent reason. If you're holding something right in the center where it's not touching any of the corners, it just won't focus on it, period. Now I'm sure that's has some more smarts behind it, where if it detects a face, then it will focus on that face. But since I'm using this as a desk camera, not as a face camera, that's not too useful to me. So yeah, this camera's been a bit of a disappointment, especially for the price it was. Whereas this module was less than half of the price, has the same specs, does better quality single shot images, and yeah, may be useful as a desk cam, may be useful for machine vision instead. I'm not too worried either way. And I do have a few more mailbag items that I may tag onto this video. I'm not sure whether any of them will be sort of quality. I've just had a couple of items come through the past week that have been sort of, if I only receive 2 packages on a day, often I will be waiting on something, so I will open them and I'll record them for the sake of it, but there's no point in me releasing a mailbag for 1 or 2 items. So I'll start trying to attach those at the end of my larger mailbags. But failing that, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.